And welcome to another program from A to Zig, the slippery slope. Hi, I'm Dr. Kozicki, and as you can tell, because I'm wearing a mask, we are in a COVID pandemic right now, and we're all taking precautions. As a psychologist and as a university professor, dealing with reality, dealing with evidence is something that is very important in my role and also in the kind of work that I do. So this program, I hope, will help you to think about alternative reality. And reality can be alternative. People can imagine all kinds of things. The issue that I want to draw here is that we can't really be successful if we exist in an alternative reality. So I don't know if you remember these folks, but Groucho Marx, the Marx Brothers, Chico Marx had a very famous line in the movie Duck Soup, 1933. And it gets repeated from time to time. Who are you going to believe, me or your own eyes? And I think this is one of those captured moments where somebody, in this case, decided to make some fun about the fact that people weren't truthful or were spreading misinformation. And I think that today we have to be really thinking the same way. Who are you going to believe, me or your own eyes? Hopefully you'll believe me because I'm trying to tell the truth. Back in 1949, a guy by the name of George Orwell wrote a very famous book, 1984, which portrayed totalitarian states and their attempt to provide limited freedom. And in this totalitarian state, they created their own language, and they called it newspeak. And what newspeak was all about was alternative facts. Well, speaking of alternative facts, jump ahead to 2017, Kellyanne Conway, who was an advisor to the president, in an interview on January 22nd, 2017, coined this phrase, actually coined this phrase when she defended then White House Press Secretary, Sean Spicer, who made a false statement about the attendance numbers at Donald Trump's inauguration as President of the United States. And the defense was, well, there are alternative facts. Well, okay, that's how we start this thing. The political purpose in Orwell's book of newspeak was to reduce the English language to the simplest concepts possible to reinforce this kind of dominance by the state, this totalitarian kind of view of how the world should be. And so when we move forward now to this modern age, we have this kind of speak, but it's not newspeak. I refer to it, and I think many people could refer to it as Trump speak. And it comes out as slogans. Now, slogans are not policies, so let's keep that in mind. But Make America Great Again, which actually is a slogan that was borrowed from Franklin Roosevelt. Fake news, build the wall, lock her up. The virus, when it gets a little warmer, it'll miraculously go away. And we're turning the corner. Voter fraud. All these are Trump speaks that reinforce this idea that you can somehow look at reality from this other lens or this other view. When Orwell was looking at this idea of newspeak, he understood that it was designed to control people. It was ordered by the state with the idea that it was intended to suppress free thought, individualism, and ultimately happiness. The new language of newspeak shapes people's minds to what the state wants them to think, feel, and even see. So it introduces these alternatives to what a person sees with their own eyes and provides something else in its place. So from this, we have seen over many years conspiracy theories, not just in this country, but around the world. And according to social psychologists, and one in particular, Sander van der Linden, he sees conspiracy theories as flourishing during times of social, political upheaval and uncertainty. And we can look at that when we go to history. If we look at all of the things that have happened over time, and I'll give you some examples of that. The Salem witch trials of 1690, the anti-Mason movement of 1776. And you wonder, what about the Masons? Why was that such a big deal? George Washington was a Mason. The anti-Catholic movement of 1835, the anti-socialism movements of 1910, and then the anti-Semitic movements of 1920. And you can look at cultural Marxism being a target in the 30s, and then the Red Scare that took place in 1950. More recently, we've seen the climate change conspiracy theories that started around the 1970s. And then we have the satanic panic theories that came out of the 1980s. And the anti-vaccine theories that came out of the 1990s and are still with us. The Y2K 2000 conspiracy theory. You all remember that one, right? The voter fraud theory that popped up around 2010. And of course, most recently now, the COVID-19 conspiracy theories of 2020. Now, I missed a whole bunch of them. There are more conspiracy theories than that. But I'm just giving you kind of an idea that this has been something that's been rolling along during times of upheaval. So, let me talk about conspiracy theories and why they exist and why they're propagated. The basic idea is that there is some kind of covert network of evildoers. This promotes, of course, a moral panic. And fear is the driving emotion. And so people who use this tend to stoke fear because it gives them power, particularly if they're a leader. And you have to think that there's a conspiracy theory mindset that is receptive to this. And let me talk a little bit about that. There is an epistemic benefit to believing in conspiracy theories. It provides a framework for understanding the world and bringing order to random events. And so the conspiracy ties it up in a nice little neat package. It also provides an existential benefit. What it does is it distracts people from facing their fear about this social political upheaval and uncertainty. Now, Noam Chomsky, basically, who many people either regard highly or disregard because of his ideas at the University of Chicago, basically kind of summed it up in this way about this mindset. The best defense against democracy is to distract people. And that's exactly what this does. It distracts people from taking democratic steps to manage the world around them. The conspiracy theory and the conspiracy theorists become powerful, and they subvert democracy in the process. And people being distracted go along with it. So let's think about the third element, or the third social benefit here for conspiracy theories to the individual. It provides people with a community of similarly disinfected thinkers who can validate one another's anxieties and shared worldview. And so it brings people together who then can continue to reinforce their hidden beliefs. And in many cases, because of social media now, they can actually externalize it and find millions of other people who have the same kind of concerns. So what's the conspiracy theory mindset? It's emotional. It's a byproduct of the conspiracy theory. And it oftentimes gives the person a feeling that they've had some profound new realization about the world. They think they're thinking more critically, when in fact, they're thinking less critically. And that's really the sadness about this, is they feel as if they've had a revelation and that they're aware, and when in fact they're not. Now, the current president, who will be leaving office shortly, just recently actually stoked this a little more with just a simple statement about why he lost the election. And he didn't say, I lost the election. He brought all of the people in with him who he wants to share this conspiracy theory with. We're all victims. Everybody here, all these thousands of people here tonight, they're all victims. Every one of you. It's not about him. he's trying to make everybody feel as if they've been cheated. And that's what conspiracy theorists are able to do. They shift this fear onto other people. So now, skeptics reject studies showing that their skepticism is partially a product of the conspiratorial kind of thinking. They believe these ideas are themselves a part of the conspiracy. So when they get facts, what the conspiracy theorists promote and what these people believe is that it's all made up, that they're using these facts to distract them from what they believe is the real story. And so at that point, they're really lost and they're on their way to being used. Conspiracy theory can be a political weapon, and it's been used that way successfully for many years, more recently by the current president. So when people use a paranoid style, there's a tendency for hypervigilance to develop, alarmist thinking, absolute beliefs, and this heated exaggeration, suspiciousness, and really a conspiratorial fantasy develops. And once it develops, it's almost like mob mentality. It's mass hysteria. It's an element of people just going along with it because they're convinced that by these conspiracy leaders that it exists. Now, when we look back at some of the conspiracy leaders of the 20th century, two stand out right away: Adolf Hitler, Joseph Stalin. They demonstrated paranoid militancy. And they also considered conflicts as something not to be mediated and compromised, but essentially to be dealt with as an absolute. And the absolute was that they were going to pit good against evil. Of course, saying that they were the good and the other people were the evil. That's the key here. We're always on the side of good. They're always on the side of bad. And if you can convince people that we're the good people, we're the ones that are going to heaven, they're the bad people, they don't believe like us, they're going to hell, or whatever, you got it made. You've bought them. So when we look at conspiracy leaders, the evil is unappeasable to them. It must be totally eliminated, you know. And so when you hear them talk, they talk about banning a whole group of people, or bombing something, or doing something total. The demand for total triumph over this situation, however, creates hopelessly unrealistic goals. These goals can't be attained. Failure to do this constantly heightens the paranoid sense of frustration that these people feel. So they're in this conspiracy cult and they feel failure. And of course, this disappointment then leads to many people feeling powerless because they didn't get what they want. For instance, in this last election, we're way past the point where all the votes have been counted, yet 70% of Republicans don't think the 2020 election was free and fair. It's obvious it is, because all the people that were involved in it have checked and double-checked, it's been vetted and so forth, and most of the people who are involved in this process have been extra careful this time around because there was the potential of threats. So as one person said, this is probably the most safest election, the most watched election in our country's history. And so we shouldn't be questioning the results. Yet the conspiracy theorists will do so. And they've got 70% of a certain group of people believing that. So let me shift over to the COVID conspiracy real quick, because this is important. On Wednesday, December 2nd, just a few days ago, 100,000 people were hospitalized due to the coronavirus. The same day, 2,804 people died of COVID-19. That's the most ever in one day. That's more people than died in 9/11. Still, many people think the virus is no worse than the flu. And again, conspiracy theorists are pushing this. Why do people deny the seriousness of COVID-19? Well, the maddening commonality of this group is most of them believe this because they haven't really met anybody personally who's had COVID-19 and died or been sick or whatever, And so it's pretty easy for them to discount it. That's going to change, however, because as more people get it, and as more people find out that somebody they know has died or whatever, it will slowly sink in as being reality. That hard ground will receive the message of reality, and as it soaks in, more people will realize COVID-19 is a real pandemic, it's a real thing, it's not a hoax, it's not something that's going to go away by itself. We're not rounding the corner, and that this is going to be a really big deal for us for some time to come. So when we talk about alternative facts and who stokes it, think about this. Donald Trump in a Twitter actually said that only 6% of the reported COVID-19 deaths are true, basically saying that 94% of the people who died have died of something else. Well, this is a big stretch. And why is it a big stretch? Is because, yes, they may have died of some organ failure brought on by the inflammation of COVID-19. And on their death certificate, it might say COVID-19 and heart failure, or COVID-19 and some other failure. But they died from COVID-19. They didn't die from just the organ failure. It was COVID-19 that made that happen. The number of COVID-19 cases or false claims about it is really something that we have to think about. Some people are still saying it's inflated because of the repeat testing. If you get tested 7 days in a row, you're still only going to be counted once by the public health department or by the hospital. The truth is, no matter how many times you test positive, you only get counted once officially in the book, so to speak. So that's not the reason why. And if anything, we're not testing at the right times and the right places and having a quick enough turnaround on testing to make it effective. Testing's not the reason we have all these cases. The reason we have all these cases is because the virus is spreading and people are getting sick and dying from it. So here's another false claim. Most people who die of COVID-19 are older. Younger people don't have to worry. Well, this is that idea that they're going to die anyways, right? Well, more than 50,000 people under the age of 64 have died from COVID-19 as of December 2nd, 2020. 50,000. Getting back to that other thing about flu, and this is no worse than flu, think about this. In a normal year, about 30,000 people die from flu. We had 50,000 people under the age of 64 die from it in less than a year. This is much worse than the flu. So here's another claim. Hospitals are inflating the COVID-19 death numbers to get more money. Well, it's true. Medicare does pay for treating the influx of COVID-19. But this is a part of the relief legislation that Congress, Nancy Pelosi, the Democrats, and the Republicans got together and put together a relief bill to help put more money in the Medicare budget to pay for all these extra people that are ending up in the hospital, in the ICUs. And just to be factual here, the hospitals are losing money. All of the elective surgeries are being shut down. People are not able to do the things they normally would do in the healthcare system. As many as half of the hospitals in the state of Michigan, for instance, are in economic distress, and many of those hospitals could close because of COVID-19. They're not making money, they're losing money. So we have to be real smart about this when we hear false claims like that. Here's another false claim. The virus is going to do what the virus is going to do. We can't stop it. And we just have to protect the most vulnerable people and go on with their life. Well, COVID-19 is a respiratory virus. People get infected mainly by breathing it in. So if we can avoid being close to someone, wear masks, watch what we're exhaling, we won't get sick. It's that simple. That's why many people are wearing masks. That's why the CDC has come out with guidelines for wearing masks. Every time I see somebody who doesn't wear a mask, I think to myself two things. One, they must believe in this conspiracy stuff. And two, they don't care about anybody else. They don't care if I get it. They could be asymptomatic. So, we have to be conscious of this. Now, here's the thing that I think is a real challenge here. How many of you are willing to tell people who aren't wearing masks, please wear a mask? I've done it. I've done it in stores. I've done it in places. I don't get a good reaction. But if we're all quiet about it, those people are going to continue to walk around without masks. This is not a political issue. This is a public health issue. Wear a mask to protect everybody else. You protect yourself too, but if you have COVID-19, if you're asymptomatic and you're breathing on me, you're affecting me and anybody else who I care about. I don't want that to happen. And of course, if you're a good person, you don't want that to happen to you or to anybody else either. Here's another false claim. When you look at the number of COVID-19 deaths compared to the U.S. population, it's a very small percentage. So we shouldn't worry about it. So when you think about this, we're saying that 270,000 deaths may seem like nothing when you compare it to 330 million people. But think of it this way. If we did what Canada did, or Singapore, or other countries, New Zealand, Australia, we wouldn't have 270,000 people dead. Maybe we'd have 30,000 dead. In other words, 240,000 people would still be alive if we had taken this seriously. So you can look at it that way. I think it's important for us to think about this as a public health threat, public health emergency, and that we should discount these false claims. We have to act together. We have to stop this conspiracy and this alternative fact that's going on out there that not wearing a mask is okay, or the COVID-19 is really nothing more than the fluid. So you and I can stop the spread. You and I can deal with these alternative facts. You know, in reality, there's always going to be a certain element of the population that is going to disbelieve everything. If we had a bell-shaped curve and we looked at it, we see that it's probably, 30% of the population that are always going to question, always going to think that it's not true, no matter what it is, or for most things. We can deal with that, particularly if those people know that we see them as being living in the world of alternative facts. But they're not going to know that if we don't tell them that, because they may continue to believe that their alternative reality is the reality that the rest of us are prepared to live in. I'm not, and I don't think you should be. Because when these alternative realities become the guiding force for the rest of us, we are all at a disadvantage. The COVID-19 epidemic is just one example of that. There are many others. The pivot point here for all of us is to start thinking in terms of what does science, what does evidence-based medicine, what does the fact bring to us? When we discount climate change as being something that's political, we discount the facts that go with it. When we discount the fact that there is, for instance, systematic bias and racism in this country, the facts go away with it. When we discount or come up with an alternative reality about COVID-19, we put more and more people at risk. Now look, the vaccine's coming out and people are going to be asked to take it. And my appeal to you is take it. Many anti-vaxxers are going to say it's going to hurt you. Well, here's an analogy that I want to use. If I'm in a boat with my friend Tom, and Tom and I are out in the boat, and the boat is sinking, and he says, I have a life jacket for you, put it on. And I say, I don't think I want to wear a life jacket. I don't like the way it feels. I don't like the color of that life jacket. I hear life jackets sometimes give you a chafe. I think I'm going to do without it. I'm a good swimmer. I think I can do without it. That's not going to help me when the boat sinks and we realize we're a mile offshore. That's the same thing with this. Don't take the chance. Get the vaccine. You may have a mild reaction to it, but it's not going to kill you. The COVID-19 virus will kill you, and it'll kill your family members. More importantly, the more of us who get this vaccine, the sooner we get to herd immunity, which means that 70% or more of the people are now immune to the virus, and we can go back to normal life. You want your normal life back? I do too. I want my normal life back. I want to be able to go to restaurants. I want to be able to stop wearing a mask. I want to be able to meet with people and so forth. But until we all get the vaccine and we all get to the point where we have immunity, that's not going to happen. And the economy in the meantime is going to continue to tank. If you look around the world, the countries that have practiced masking, social distancing, and have done all the things that public health has asked of them, their economies are coming back strong. When you look at the United States right now, we're struggling with another relief bill because our economy is sinking. And let me tell you this, if we don't get together and work together on this, the two things that we most likely fear, which include more deaths and sickness, and a failing economy, which means people out of work, not being able to feed their families, not being able to take care of themselves, hospitals inundated and overwhelmed, and for the most part, America declining and becoming not a world power, but probably a second world nation that is struggling to keep up with the rest of the world. So I'm asking you, get the vaccine, start believing in science, and when these conspiracy theories appear and you see these alternative realities being talked about, it's not a bad thing to speak up. It's not a bad thing to say, wait a minute, there's more to it than what you're saying. We all have to get together on this. Thank you some more. From me to you, it's important for us to not go down that slippery slope and end up with more problems. Thank you very much for listening to this program. I hope you can stay well. I hope you have a mask to wear, and I hope that you're also a believer in science. I know I am, and I hope to live a long time because of that. Good health to you, and good day.